Is a false FIR necessarily quashable? Does an FIR which according to you is false become necessarily quashable by the court? क्या एक झूठा FIR जो आपके हिसाब से झूठा है वो क्वैश करने लायक बन जाता है? I will be answering this question in this video, so keep watching. Prior to this video, I have made about 2-3 videos on quashing of FIR. You can watch them here. After watching my previous videos with regard to quashing of FIR, many of you have questioned me, sir, क्या मेरे खिलाफ जो झूठी FIR दायर हुई है वो क्वैश हो सकती है? That question really made me make this video because I think some more light is required to be thrown on this aspect. I believe that a false FIR does not necessarily become quashable. It may or may not become quashable FIR. So before we understand this minute difference between a false FIR and a quashable FIR, let me clarify certain things about what a quashable FIR is. So as I explained to you in the previous videos that I strongly recommend you to watch, there are certain tests which are required to be satisfied before an FIR can be quashed by High Court. The tests are 7 in number, but I will sum them up for you in 2 points. And please do not forget to subscribe to my channel. The first kind of test is when the allegations made in the FIR, even if taken to be true at their face value, do not constitute an offense as defined in Indian Penal Code or in any other criminal law in the country. So that is the first test. In other words, when the allegations made in the FIR, even if go uncontroverted, even if taken to be true at their face value, do not make out any offense as defined in the criminal law of this country. That is the first test. And the second test is that the FIR is manifestly malified. That means it must be shown, it can be seen from the record, or easily it can be seen that the FIR that is made against you is apparently false. When I use the word manifestly, it means apparently. Very quickly, the court should be able to see that the prosecution that is launched against the applicant is apparently suffering from bad intention, malifies. That is the second thing. Now, when you claim or say that an FIR against you is false, you probably mean that the events described in that FIR have not happened or have not happened in the manner in which they are alleged. In this sense, you say that the FIR is false, and that's why you want it to be quashed. But remember, the test that I described just some time before for making an FIR quashable. What is the test? Let us remember it. The test is that when the allegations made in the FIR, even if taken to be true on their face value, do not constitute an offense as defined in the criminal law of this country. So there is a vast difference between an FIR which is false according to you and FIR which is quashable in law. So when applying the first test that I just told you some time before, when the courts consider the question whether the FIR that is before them, which is alleged to be false, is quashable or not, the thing that the court examine is whether the actual allegations, actual story narrated in the FIR really fits into various ingredients of the sections which are slapped or which are applied in the FIR or in any other sections which are not so applied. If the answer is that the allegations do not constitute any offense, that FIR becomes quashable. So irrespective of the fact whether the events that are described in the FIR have really happened or not, the courts do not really pay attention to that aspect of the matter, because see, this is all a matter of evidence which is required to be proved before the trial court. But before the High Court, the question is of quashing of FIR, then at that stage or at that point of time, the High Courts do not weigh the pros and cons of the evidence that is brought by prosecution in the form of charge sheet. The witnesses are yet to enter the witness box. The documents are yet to be proved by the witnesses by entering the witness box. So at that stage, the High Courts normally do not weigh the pros and cons of the prosecution case, because that task is to be performed by the trial court. At the stage of considering the question whether the FIR is quashable or not, the High Courts apply those tests which I just described. So when the first test is applied, and if the FIR passes the first test, that the allegations, even if taken to be true on their face value or even if they go uncontroverted, do not make out an offense, then that becomes a quashable FIR. Now coming to the second test, that the FIR is so manifestly mala fide that the events that are described must not have happened. So in order for the second test to be applied, that it does not leave any doubt for the High Court to conclude that the story narrated in the FIR is apparently false. It must be very, very clear as daylight. It should be very clear, it should be very apparent. Only then the High Court would be quashing FIR. So the answer to the question whether a false FIR becomes necessarily quashable or not is whether that FIR satisfies either of the two tests. If the answer is yes, the FIR does satisfy either of the two tests, then whether that FIR is real, true, genuine or false, it doesn't matter. The FIR becomes quashable. Thanks once again.